you've been optimizing the wrong hour of your life. The cold shower, the protein, the journal with 3 gratitudes and 1 intention, all of it polishing the surface of a self you haven't actually decided to become yet. You've mistaken motion for movement. And the gap between them is why your mornings feel productive and your years feel stuck. By the end of this, you'll see why mental rehearsal at sunrise quietly reshapes a life that no checklist ever could. Start here. The first hour after waking is the only hour of your day when the door between 2 worlds is open. Your conscious mind is still loose, half dreaming, locked into nothing yet. The subconscious, which runs roughly 95% of your behavior, is unusually receptive. Whatever you place into awareness during that window gets absorbed at a depth no afternoon affirmation can reach. Productivity culture took that sacred window and filled it with tasks. Make the bed, drink the water, stretch the hamstrings, check the planner. Each of those is fine on its own. Stacked together as your morning, they accomplish something subtle and damaging. They train you to begin every day by performing the identity you already have. Faster, sharper, more efficient, the same self, executing the same patterns inside the same invisible ceiling. Here's the spiritual law most people skip steps in. Your outer life is the printout of your inner state, the assumption you carry about who you are, quietly, when nobody's watching. That assumption is the seed. Everything else, your habits, your discipline, your output, is just the soil and weather around a seed you planted years ago and never thought to replace. A productivity routine waters the soil. A mental rehearsal routine plants a new seed. This is why 2 people with nearly identical morning checklists can live completely different lives. Same alarm, same green juice, same gym slot. One climbs, one loops. The visible behavior matches, the invisible assumption underneath does the actual voting. Neville Goddard called the practice living in the end. He taught it for 40 years to anyone who'd listen, and the technique is almost embarrassingly simple. Before you fully wake, before your feet touch the floor, you sit with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the having, rather than the wanting. You rehearse, in vivid sensory detail, a scene that implies your desire is already complete. The handshake, the keys in your hand, the voice on the other end of the phone saying yes. You stay in that scene until it feels natural, until the part of you that protested, but it isn't true yet, goes quiet. That quiet is the doorway. Most people never reach it because they're already brushing their teeth and answering messages. So what makes the rehearsal stronger than the habit? A productivity habit is an action performed by your current self. A mental rehearsal is a state inhabited by your future self. One is a verb, the other is a verb tense. Tense is more powerful than action because tense determines which actions feel natural in the first place. Think about that the next time you're forcing yourself through a cold plunge while still feeling like the same person who needs forcing. There's an inner mechanism here worth understanding. Your imagination, when occupied fully, registers as experience. When you rehearse a scene with full sensory presence, the texture, the temperature, the weight of it, you're laying down the same internal architecture you'd lay down by actually living it. The self who walks out of that 20-minute rehearsal has, in a small but real way, already been there. Repeat that for 60 mornings, and the cumulative shift is structural. 60 mornings, 20 minutes, 1,200 minutes of deliberate occupation of a higher state. Run that against a year of bullet journals, and tell me which one is doing the heavier work. Now, the honest pushback. Someone reading this is thinking, I've tried visualization, it did nothing. Fair. And the answer matters, because this is where most people quit. Visualization fails when performed as a request. You sit there picturing the outcome, then open your eyes back into the same self who lacks it, and the contrast between the image and the reality creates a quiet despair you mistake for clarity. That despair is feedback. It's telling you that you rehearsed wanting, not having. Those are 2 completely different vibrations, and the universe answers the one you actually occupy. Living in the end means the feeling tone after you've crossed the finish line. Calm, slightly bored even, the dropping of the question. If your rehearsal leaves you energized and craving, you stayed on the wanting side of the line. The work is to walk the few inches over, a practical shape for the morning if you want one. Before opening your eyes, before reaching for the phone, you stay horizontal and slightly drowsy. You enter what Goddard called the state akin to sleep. You construct one short scene under 2 minutes of imagined time that confirms the thing is done. You loop it until the feeling settles, the way a song you love settles after the third listen. Then you rise. The rest of your morning can include whatever habits serve you, but they're no longer doing the heavy lifting. They're maintenance on a foundation you've already poured. Compare that to the standard productivity stack: coffee, calendar, cold exposure, deep work block. Useful, necessary even. Every single one of those operates on the assumption that the bottleneck in your life is execution. For most people, it's identity. You're executing brilliantly on behalf of a self who was set in stone before you knew you had a choice in the matter. You can't out-execute a self who believes the result is impossible. You can only replace the self. There's a quieter reason mental rehearsal beats the habit stack, and it has to do with what each one teaches you about reality. A productivity routine teaches you that outcomes come from doing. A rehearsal routine teaches you that outcomes come from being, and that doing is what being naturally generates. Both teachings produce results. The doing model produces results inside the ceiling of your current identity. The being model raises the ceiling first, and the doing reorganizes itself underneath. This is the part that takes spiritual maturity to accept. It feels like cheating. It feels too easy. Surely the universe wants to see you suffer through your 50 tasks before it grants you the thing. The persistence of that belief is the single biggest reason intelligent, disciplined people stay stuck for decades. They've equated worthiness with strain. They've made effort a god. And the god of effort is jealous. It will accept your offerings forever without ever giving back the one thing you're really asking for. Mental rehearsal is the absence of physical effort and the presence of interior effort. The work is in holding a state your environment is actively contradicting. Sit with the feeling of being already chosen when the inbox is empty. Sit with the feeling of being already loved when the phone hasn't rung. Sit with the feeling of being already wealthy when the account says otherwise. That's the friction. It's the hardest thing most people will ever attempt, which is exactly why the productivity routine feels like a relief by comparison. Checklists are easier than self-conception. Here's something nobody tells you about the mornings that change everything. They feel almost mundane in the moment. A few minutes of quiet imagery, a slight warmth in the chest, and then you get up and make the coffee like always. The shift is invisible from inside the day. You only notice it weeks later, when situations start arriving that contradict your old life, when a stranger says the thing you needed to hear, when an opportunity surfaces from a direction you weren't watching, when a fear you've carried for years simply forgets to show up at its usual hour. That last one is the giveaway. The disappearance of a familiar fear is how you know the seed took. The Kybalion frames it as the principle of mentalism. The all is mind, and the universe is mental. You don't have to swallow that whole to use it. Just notice that every single thing you've ever experienced has been filtered through a state of consciousness. Change the filter, and the experience changes downstream. The filter is set in the morning, whether you set it deliberately or let yesterday's leftover state set it for you. Most people are running on a filter installed when they were 9 years old, refreshed each morning by autopilot. The autopilot is the enemy. The discipline of mental rehearsal is the act of taking the controls back, one sunrise at a time. So what would it look like to actually do this? You'd wake 5 minutes earlier than necessary. You'd resist the magnetic pull of the phone. You'd stay still and construct in your imagination the smallest possible scene that implies your desire is already real. You'd feel it until it bores you. You'd get up, you'd live the day. You'd repeat tomorrow. You'd stop measuring progress by how the day felt and start measuring by what shows up in week 6, week 10, week 16. And you'd accept that the productivity habits, the cold plunge, the journal, the planner, keep their place. They support the new self. They don't manufacture it. The morning is the moment the day is still soft. Productivity culture grabs that softness and stamps yesterday's identity into it harder. The spiritual practice keeps the softness and presses a new shape in. You have a state problem disguised as a discipline problem. And the state was supposed to be chosen by you in the one window each day when choosing is still possible. That window opens tomorrow at the sound of your alarm. What you do in the first quiet minutes will decide which version of you walks through the rest of the hours. Pick the version who already has it, then go meet the day that version has been waiting for.